What's up, you certified beauties? It's Nick here from Nick's Taxes. Welcome back to another video. And I'm going out here on record to say I am never trusting what Justin Trudeau says again, because he has burned me not once, not twice, but now 3 times. I have taken his word for something and I have been wrong on this channel. So I am not listening to Justin Trudeau anymore, because just back in December, he said he sees no clear path for a UBI in Canada, which meant that him and his Liberal government were not on board to discuss a UBI. As you know, in my previous couple videos, we've been talking about this new UBI bill. It's Bill 273 that's on the table with our Canadian government right now, but we didn't think we had approval from our Liberal government. We definitely didn't have approval from the Conservatives, but you know, these people who put this forward, UBI Works, as well as the NDPs in Green, were looking more towards supporting this UBI, whereas back in December, Justin Trudeau said, no, I don't think that's on the table right now. We've done some other things with our spending that kind of support throwing extra money at people who need it most, so a UBI isn't really there. However, in just this past weekend, the Liberals overwhelmingly supported the implementation of a UBI, which means that this Bill 273 is definitely more on the table and more realistic to pass given this new update from our Liberal government. So I said overwhelmingly supported. 77% of the Liberal government supported a permanent implementation of a universal basic income, which would basically be like a permanent CERB. So if you remember the CERB, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, that came out at the tune of $2,000 per month for everyone who needed it at the beginning of the pandemic. Once that ran out, they kind of had that time frame and they realized that, hey, this pandemic's still going on, people still need help. They made an extension, they altered it a little bit, they called it the Canada Recovery Benefit, and I've talked about that at length, but they've kept that $2,000 per month for those who really need it. And so now with that coming to an end at some point this year, they're looking at permanently extending this $2,000 per month income for those who really need it. But now they're looking at giving money out to everyone potentially. And this is where the universal basic income comes in. So the UBI, they're kind of looking at this $2,000 per month as kind of a guaranteed minimum income level. So if you're making less than that, they want to make sure that everyone has at least $2,000 per month as a Canadian, and then everyone else, depending on your financial situation, could receive a certain level of income, and the proposal right now is $500 per month for every Canadian. The key here is this universal basic income, which means that everyone would be at $2,000 per month minimum. Now, before you start asking about who would qualify for this and the details, those aren't on the table yet. They haven't worked out those details about who would qualify, new Canadians, seniors, disability. We don't know anything about that. Right now, they're just talking about the principle of this permanent UBI per se, or this permanent $2,000 per month. So let's talk about this a little bit more. But before we get into it, if you're new to the channel, how's it going? I'm Nick. I make videos on personal tax, finance, and investing, all with a Canadian perspective. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, please drop a like and consider subscribing. Thanks so much for doing so. And let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on UBI. As of right now, 8.7% of Canadians apparently live under the poverty line, and there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions more, that are struggling to make ends meet. And the Liberal government is now saying that a UBI would be a great way to support these people and help make them financially a little bit more stable. I quote here, "Given the success of the CERB program, a UBI will assist seniors and low-income Canadians maintain an adequate standard of living regardless of working status." The Liberals have also said that the country's strong and robust social safety net is adapted to the 21st century, adding that a program to send checks to all families is completely consistent with our values as a party. And that party obviously is the Liberal Party. He says, put more cash in the hands of working Canadians and families, and that would eventually lift millions out of poverty. So They also admit that a UBI would not be a silver bullet to fix everything, but in done with conjunction with other progressive policies, it would be a critical step in making sure that everyone was out of the poverty line in Canada. And that obviously is the Liberal government saying that. On the other hand, you have the Conservatives who, as we know, are against it. They are for less government interaction and more people working for themselves. They have come out and made some statements as well. They have called the UBI risky and an unknown experiment, and it could potentially leave millions of Canadians further behind. Obviously, there's problems with potential inflation and things like that. He says that the government should have been focusing on things like creating jobs rather than fixating on implementing risky, expensive, and untested economic policies. As we know, the UBI has been tested in Manitoba and in Ontario, but on a very small scale, and no official results were actually provided at the end of both of these tests. So while they were done, they didn't actually finish the pilot projects. He also mentions that they're expensive, and he is very right on that. We've talked about the prices in the past, and right now they're saying that it could cost Canada $85 billion net for this year, rising as high as $93 billion by 2025. So by 2025, we could see this being a $93 billion proposal or policy in place to make sure everyone got this amount of money. The government has also come out to say they are prepared to spend up to $100 billion this year to help kickstart the economy in this post-pandemic world. And, they haven't had a budget in like 2 years. And right now it's reported that we have a record high deficit of $381 billion. So when you add in the record high deficit, $381 billion, plus you add in a potential $100 billion of spending in this next year, plus another 85 to 93 potential billion for UBI, we could see some crazy high debt numbers, and it just makes me wonder what could happen down the road with these levels of debt and what it would do to our economy as a whole for the long term. So that's what the government said on UBI from the Liberal perspective. I will keep you guys up to date regarding the UBI and obviously regarding the bill that's with Parliament right now, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Some other things that affected you and your money potentially was the Liberals rejected an inheritance tax proposal as well as a hike in capital gains tax. So this is big. This is good news, I think, from my perspective. The first thing we'll talk about is the capital gains tax. Now, if you invest outside of a registered account, if you just have a personal investing account and you purchase stocks, when you buy that stock and then later sell it, if you sold it at a gain, that is called a capital gain. And the way capital gains are taxed is 50% of the gain is actually taxed at your marginal rates. So you're only taxed on half of the gains that you make. Let's say, for instance, I bought a stock at $10. It went as high as $30. So I therefore had a $20 capital gain. I'm only taxed on 50% of that. So 50% of my $20 gain goes towards my taxable income. I'm not taxed at 50%. It's not the 50% rate. I'm only taxed on 50% of the gains. So that means half of the income I earn from capital gains is tax-free. The other half is subject to tax at my marginal tax rate. So depending on my level of income, my tax rate will be different than yours. There is also going to be an inheritance tax on all assets over potentially $2 million that was proposed, and that has also been scrapped by the Liberal government. So we'll see what happens later on, especially with this deficit that we are currently in. It'll be interesting to see how the government comes up with different ways to increase their revenue via taxes. So that's today's video. I hope you got value out of the video. If you did, again, please just give it a thumbs up. Helps my channel grow. Really appreciate that. And consider subscribing. Obviously, let me know in the comments below what you guys think, and I will see you guys in the next video. Happy taxing.